life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is a phrase that's hammered into our minds as early as we can put our right hands over our hearts. But what happens when the liberty to self medicate, to self soothe, and to explore our minds gets criminalized? Today, we will be learning about how decriminalizing drugs can improve society as a whole. Now, we've seen it before. Alcohol prohibition in the 1930s was a failed program that set up the United States way back. Nowadays, the prohibition has moved on to substances that could have medicinal benefits. As an alternative, people turn to legal prescription drugs that are far worse than the drug that they're looking to substitute, leading to larger amounts of arrests and higher opioid related deaths. As taxpayers, we cannot ignore the waste of resources spent on treating a mental health crisis as a criminal issue. Now, drug prohibition impacts various aspects of society. The policies brought forth by the drug prohibition affect communities of color more so than those of Caucasians. When the sentences for these drug offenses are served, the aftermath can do more harm than good. And arrests also lead to more overdoses, but new programs that provide support for those abusing drugs do better than a dehumanizing incarceration policy. If we look throughout the history of the United States, drug prohibition always impacted impoverished communities of color. Nowadays, minorities are the majority in the prison population. The Drug Policy Alliance, a harm reduction society, states that about 80% of the people in federal prison serving time for a drug offense are black or Latino. 60% if it's a state prison. So that's a high amount of disproportionality amongst these populations. So, what happens if we continue to treat drug use as a crime? Now, by treating drug use as a criminal issue, you run a higher chance that the problem will be coming back. In fact, a study published by the New England Journal of Medicine suggested that newly released prisoners were at a highest risk of dying from a drug overdose, suggesting that interventions are necessary post release. Now, the steps towards decriminalization have begun, but it's only the beginning. The benefits can already be seen. Enter LEAD. Back in 2011, the city of Seattle, Washington began a program by the name of the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, and it began to steer drug crimes away from arrests and towards harm reduction practices. And it's shown positive results in reducing the amount of nonviolent drug related offenses. Participants in LEAD who were provided support and proper resources were reported to have a 58% lower chance of returning to jail. So, decriminalization of drug use and possession will reduce the minority population in the prison system dramatically, and it will reduce the amount of drug related deaths when they're released. And if treated like a mental health issue, will reduce the chances of previously incarcerated person from going to jail or from returning to jail. So if we as a society stop treating people who self-medicate as people in need and not as criminals, we can progress. And as a society that focuses on helping the vulnerable, this can reduce prison populations, unnecessary overdoses, and just overall crime. So, renowned botanist and academia's favorite mystic slash psychonaut Terence McKenna had this to say about the state of the war on drugs and general demonization of mind altering plants. He said, if the words life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness don't include the right to experiment with our own consciousness, then the Declaration of Independence isn't worth the hemp it was written on.